When it comes to fear and propaganda, our greatest tool is to seek understanding, to educate ourselves, to increase and expand our awareness of what might be the truth, and to confirm it for ourselves rather than buy into propaganda. There's a lot that we can do to confront agendas, social engineering, the manufacturing of our consent and sentiment. It takes a little more effort, but it means the difference between sowing division, animosity, hatred. There's so much that we can do to have a better outcome than what tends to happen. Ignorance is dangerous. It's harmful. It doesn't excuse us from the burdens. It doesn't excuse us from the situation. We have a responsibility to know better. And the information is always accessible to us if we are willing to search. There's no reason for Muslims to fear Christians or Christians to fear Muslims. There's no reason for anybody to campaign against the other. There's no threat. There's no danger. There's no harm. No religion has ever done harm to anyone. It is man. It's man who has in his heart the intention or negligence, fear, malice, whatever the description may be. It cannot be blamed on any religion. Religions have been used divisively to justify oppression on the earth as legacy, systems of infrastructure, political campaigns, legacies, and not always innocent. I want to challenge all of us to increase our awareness, not to become a Christian or a Muslim. That's your business. But what my focus and intention is to be brave enough to acknowledge where the global agendas are at the cusp of Scorpio and Sagittarius, and what we can learn from it. I've got a lot to say in this discourse, and let me clarify before even going into it. Everyone cannot be represented by what a few do, and everyone cannot be represented by the reputation that a few have constructed for any demographic, nationality, or class of people, gender, or whatever the case may be. So, with that being said, I want to have an honest examination of what are the current issues, topics on the headlines that deserves our attention to align with and process so that we can make ourselves immune to the programming. Let's not become a part of the programming. The Scorpio stellium, it taught us a lot about letting go of control that we needed to feel secure, feel relevant, to feel like we have some sense of validation in our identity. We learn to accept that there's very little that we can control if we are to be authentic. There are limitations to the power and control that we get to experience, that we get to have and harness. It can bring out the worst of us because it does lead straight to fear. And who we are when we are fearful, when we're afraid, we can become very dangerous. Who's more dangerous than someone who's subjected to fear, led by fear? And when you pair ignorance with that, we have a real problem on our hands, and all of us learn these things in our life. We're still learning not to let fear control us, determine our destiny and outcome, our fate, that is. And collectively, this remains consistent, a lesson that we're all learning together as well. Who enjoyed power? Who now has to learn to let power go? Somebody's really afraid in this nation. Someone's full of fear in this nation. Venus, the astral body, it includes alikes, communities. What we come together are born. The likenesses. People of the same breath, of the same spirit, of the same consciousness. And moving through Scorpio, well, in the astral body that we are identifying with collectively, what is our crisis with power? Inevitably, our crisis with power is always going to include where we are in position with truth. The narratives don't seem to be doing the job. Historically, they have. There's a great deal of effort, budgets, campaigns to maintain the control that white males can feel themselves slipping away from every direction in this nation. The status that they've enjoyed is threatened. Now I realize I'm going to be the bad guy for bringing this up, for talking about it. The bad guy. I will always seem to play the bad guy. Never learned my lesson, huh? His status is changing. His status in America is changing. The 1776 stickers on his trucks, American flags, We the People t-shirts. It's not keeping up anymore with him making himself as the mascot for the American flag, what it means to be American. He can't pull it off anymore. Netanyahu is trying to keep them in position that's favorable for his own agendas, supporting, promoting, and funding an aggressive campaign of fear-mongering and propaganda to raise Christian nationalism that bridges Zionism with his Khazarian Israeli state intent to fulfill his promise to change the minds of the youth through social media. And it's moving, but it can't keep up with the expression of reality in and of itself and what we really are dealing with in this nation. What is happening, what is coming to pass. Regardless, it's futile for him to try to fight it. All the money in the world is not going to stop evolution, the inevitable, the timelines of great nations that rise and fall. You can't stop the schedule. Many people are seeing through this illusion now. Trump, with his nose in Nigeria, speaking of oppression of Christians. When in truth, it's his lust for manifest destiny. And who better to help him with his campaign, to push influence and leverage political approval, than to find a black woman whose natural power and influence has a weight of superiority in how it moves through politics on the left, effortlessly winning the sentiments of the people just in appearance, especially from celebrity status. Obama was successful in using black women to push gay agendas, feminism, the dismantling of marriages, alienation of fathers and men from society. Stripping America of its moral fabric. Cancel culture coming to its intensity. Black women are the favorite useful idiot. And that is not to call her an idiot, but it's a term that describes someone who has an emotional attachment to their own personal agenda in a microcosm, and in the macrocosm, the one who is the chessboard master sees interest, benefit, and opportunity in the direction that they are already bound for in their emotional intensity. And you hitch your agenda to it, and it's a free ride and free campaign off of the power of divine feminine, which is influence, Venus. Nicki Minaj, in her ignorance of what this is all about, her natural intention was to speak up for Christians, as she should. How could we morally object to that idea? But when we are ignorant, our own convictions, can be used against us. Our own convictions become convenient tools, means, weapons for those who do not have such good intentions. So as the people rally the barbs on the Nicki Minaj, lusting over how she looks, the vanity, the sentiment, the poetry, the romanticized ideals of her speaking, fanned out, with no awareness of what's really happening. Land grab, resources, exploitation of other nations. It is what it is. Some people are just never gonna get it. Ignorance is always going to be the blissful preference of most, and very few can carry the burden or endure the burden of knowing the truth, nor the courage and resilience to align with it. So Sagittarius is a new world that very few will get to enter. Very few. The stellium will pass through Sagittarius, and it's a new world, a new reality for those who align with truth. It is a new beginning in freedom. But there's limitations to that depending on who you were when it came to truth. And in that, Sagittarius becomes a power struggle, not an expression of claim and freedom. Let's observe some things. There's currently a hysteria in the country, anxiety, fear. In Western companies and countries in particular, the United States and also the UK, about the rise of Islam and the fact that many Muslims choose to subject themselves to Sharia law within their own communities. And places such as Dearborn, Michigan, and Texas, it's more establishment of communities and infrastructures independent from the culture, infrastructure, and societal centralization or dependence upon the norms of American ideals, going off on their own. The anxiety is increasing, specifically with white males, white Christian males. Fear-mongering, anger, resent, sowing seeds of division, misinformation, and it's nothing new. It's what they've been doing since the beginning of this nation, since the beginning of the push of doctrine of discovery and manifest destiny, which expands the Spanish Inquisition on authority and leverage of unum sanctum, which goes back to Vatican, the backing of the Vatican and Khazarian dark power, who funded and provided the slave trade in and of itself, transatlantic. 1492, the deal was sealed that Muslims have finally been conquered, and now the cross can be erected. We have a victory, and the ideologies of Constantinian Christianity, which is corporate in all of its expression, not religious, not spiritual, ain't got a damn thing to do with Jesus, now reigns supreme over the society for the same reasons that Constantine had, in the fact that, okay, I got a useful idiot here. You're all in love with your Jesus, your religion, the majority of the people, so I'm going to use it to my advantage politically, and I'm just going to come out, oh, I'm a Christian, yeah, I believe in Jesus, and now I have the people's emotional intent that's already going in a particular direction. I'm going to use that like a rocket launcher behind my own mission, and you're the useful idiot who doesn't understand what I'm using your own faith and emotional intensity for, and it's going to work well like a well-oiled machine for my own corporate interests. And that model, that system, has been the essence, the driving force behind white supremacy. Christianity and white supremacy is one. It is one. Two characters have always been subject to the oppressive intent of white Christian nationalism, and that is the black male, so-called, who is an Asiatic indigenous Moor, and then you have Muslims, the two greatest threats to the white Christian nationalists, the two who he fears the most, the two who he loses sleep over, the two where if they happen to get any type of leverage, comparable or equal power, authority, capability, or even independence from them, his anxiety increases, he grows more insecure and fearful, and his propaganda surges all over again. I have to turn the people against you to help me, to keep you suppressed, to keep you down, to keep you vilified, to keep you disenfranchised, and to keep you politically subjugated to the hysteria and anxieties and distrust of the people. Same old story. Nothing has changed. Nothing unique. Nothing different. His projection is intensifying. The Pisces North Node, Saturn, and Neptune, it brings a review. It brings a review of what have we done with our guilty conscience. What have we done with our guilty conscience? And that in the context of Cancer Jupiter, to every nationality, to every demographic, to every people, to every fourth house ancestral legacy, to every society, to every household, to every people, to every race, to every to both genders. Fourth house, what have you done with your guilty conscience? What is inside of your guilty conscience? What is the contents of your guilty conscience? And where do we exercise this? Where do we purge it? Where do we heal it? Where do we deal with it? Where do we confront it with truth? You guessed it. Scorpio. Scorpio. Some people will learn. Some people will process. Some people will evolve, set themselves free, clear their conscience, align with the truth, submit to the truth, and adjust themselves into the opportunities of Sagittarius stellium, which we are now at the bridge of the transfer of stellium to Sagittarius. But what seems to happen is that in every household, fourth house, every nationality, every demographic, every people, there are those who have learned and there are those who have not learned. Everybody didn't learn the lesson. And this is not unique to or particular to any demographic, nationality, race, or household, society, community, fourth house. Because in every fourth house, Cancer, in personal scale and in a national sense, there are those who align with the truth and there are those who did not accomplish that. And those who did not accomplish that, the worlds have been separated. We live in different worlds. And those who chose not to evolve themselves, their mission is to call others back into the misery with them, back into the darkness with them, back into that world with them, to use their energy to find security for themselves in the lies, the illusions, the delusions, the burdens of guilt, shame, injustice that they have manifest for themselves. This is where we're at, the parting of worlds. So, what I have to say about this, of course, doesn't apply to every people of the demographic I'm talking about. But the infamous is not shy to say the truth. Islam is not the problem. Never has been. Black males in America are not the problem. Never has been. We have our issues. We have our stains. We have our faults. We have our errors. We have our crimes against ourselves and humanity. We have our portion to clean up. I'll be the first to admit that. But there's a black hole that's attempting to suck the light into itself, the light of the people into itself, of ignorance and fear through propaganda. Netanyahu slammed a heavy check, a heavy budget down on the table to promote it, to make sure that the agenda gets pushed. Where he said out of his mouth that it is a problem that the youth have become disillusioned about the status of Israeli state corporation. The intent is to convert the society to the most compatible state of consciousness or regime with Israeli Zionism, Khazarian regime. They have always been compatible with white supremacy. Wherever white supremacy was, Khazarianism, Zionism, it was there too, as the puppet master of its expression. even in the slave trade. Khazarians were guiding them. Khazarians were teaching them. Khazarians were the dark power behind white men who went all over the earth in the name of Christianity and Jesus is King to oppress every people, every nation, every indigenous tribe on the face of the earth, except for Ethiopians, which the Italians attempted that, but they failed. You want to talk about terrorism? Who should be afraid of who? Violence, genocide, the wiping out of entire people, the theft of land, legacy, identities, languages, heritage, culture. You want to talk about rape, the spread of disease, immorality, cultures that are totally detached from reverence of nature, culture that is entirely in opposition to the holiness of spirit and nature, practices protocol systems that destroys nature, extinction of animals hunted into extinction even until this day. Who does that? There is one people in the entire earth who carries that reputation, and that is white men, and in particular, white Christian men. There's nobody on earth who has that reputation of that scale. There's nobody else on earth who has that resume. They're the only ones. They are the only ones who created the Christian black codes that told both the indigenous Moors of America who were already here in those tribes, which includes all of the Native American tribes, indigenous, not just native, which the indigenous were black people, the natives were Asian. There's a difference. It included them, and it also included those who they trafficked in, human trafficking from Africa. They the ones stole the Christian black codes. Notice the word I'm using, Christian here, the hypocrisy. That told all of these tribes of the Americas, of Western countries, you are not allowed to speak your native language. You are not allowed to practice your native religions. You are not allowed to carry on your native traditions, your heritage. Your children don't belong to you. They belong to your master. I could sell your daughter, I could sell your son. It ain't shit you could do about it. I could sell your wife, I could sell your husband. It ain't a motherfucking thing that you could do about it. I could fuck your wife right now and have as many babies as I want out of that bitch. Ain't gonna be shit you could do about it. And they did do that, including the founding fathers, who fucked the slaves and had baby after fucking baby after baby after fucking baby and hit them. And this was under Christian black codes that made them entitled in reflection of unum sanctum. The Pope bull that suggests white males has taken ownership of every human being that is not a white male. This is your Christianity. The same Christian black codes that had me to take 28 years to figure out who I am. 28 years. That is how sophisticated and layered they hid my identity as an indigenous person to the United States of America through Cherokee tribal national status, which makes me a Moor, an indigenous Moor, Asiatic Moor. I am the symbol of America. I am what America is and what it looks like. I'm the fucking flag. Me, nigga. Nappy hair, broad nose, big motherfucking lips. I am America, nigga. Indigenous. Which is more thorough than native. I'm the one that's the color of a fucking copper penny. I'm the color of a chestnut, which are the two descriptions of indigenous. And these same white Christian national settlers and colonists decided that I'm not going to be allowed to be called indigenous or native in order to place me in a status of non-descent. In order to complete theft and make T-bonds of my ancestors who they human trafficked as consequence of that detachment from their estate and status and identity. Breaking every treaty. All this was done in the name of Christianity. Christian black codes didn't let anybody own land, voting rights, any type of access to power, authority, political leverage. Nope, you're not white. Many who they bought on the slave ships, who were not indigenous to this land, were Muslims. Many West Africans were Muslims. If they were not Ifa Yoruba African spiritual traditionalists, and those African spiritual traditions, because they will be killed according to the Christian black codes, or punished according to the Christian black codes for practicing animism, African spiritual tradition, they had to hide it within Christian Catholic rituals, which is where you get voodoo. Voodoo is an attempt to hide African spiritual animism and Catholic ideologies. And that was under the French. Santeria was an attempt to hide it under the Spaniards. And hoodoo was an attempt to hide it under the English. Why did they have to hide it? Because you would be killed for being you. You would be killed for honoring your forefathers. The hypocrisy is deep in white men's conscience of what they have done to people all over this earth, and especially in this nation, or de facto nation, of United States, North America. Their conscience is heavy and burdened with guilt. And what you are seeing is projection. It is projection, which is a natural consequence of Scorpio Sagittarius cusp, when there is work to be done to transfer the status of self from Scorpio into the status of Sagittarius. And this has to be done through the water trine, the subconscious through Pisces, and the contents of the ancestral house that you were born into, which includes curses, covenants, and that which your forefathers have done, which you have inherited as a status. what you have inherited of deeds and behaviors and beliefs, you have to reconcile with it. You have to come to truth with it. And white men are finding themselves incapable of doing that. It's not all white men. I'm not making a sweeping indictment here. Let me clarify. I know for a fact that this is not all white men. I know that for a fact. Let me clarify. So I go on to say, the struggle is getting louder and louder at that transfer. They're not able to get past their pride. They're not able to get past their ego. They're not able to get past the narcissism. They're not able to face the insecurity. They're not able to deal with the fear. The truth is here. And we're seeing what white males are choosing to do when the truth has manifest, and all indigenous people of the earth are singing the same song. That what you did to me was fucked up. That in the name of Christianity, you did some fucked up shit to me. You took everything that we had. You took everything we had to be proud of. You took our identity. You took our estate. You took our land. You took our culture. You took our language. You took our name. You took our rights. You took our humanity. You took everything fucking from us in the name of Christianity. And now you have the nerve, the audacity to stand in full hypocrisy, pointing the finger, talking about, oh, these Muslims are taking over. They're a threat. They're terrorists. They're dangerous. They're going to get us. No, that's their own guilty conscience speaking out. Their own guilty conscience is vomiting its substance from the gut. And what is the gut? It is both Cancer and Virgo. Is the gut. Cancer is a conviction of the gut. Virgo is the contents of the gut. And they're spewing it out. They are vomiting their fears. They're vomiting what's in their subconscious. And they are making somebody else responsible for what they themselves understand their status to be. Terrorists. Abusers, a threat, danger to humanity, destroyers of nature. Who else hunts animals to extinction except for white men? Who else comes up with systems and infrastructures that abuses nature? Who else did not have a natural connection to the earth and the spiritual forces and reverence that is owed to it? Who else has been alienated from the spiritual realms of the earth? Who else arrived from continent to continent without that respect? Who else? It's two people. The Khazarians and white men. Everything they're accusing Muslims of being is exactly what they themselves are. Everything they're charging Muslims of being is exactly what they themselves are. Everything that they accuse them of doing is what they have already done at scales that nobody can match. They're still dealing with human trafficking, Khazarians and white men. They're still dealing with slavery. And the evidence is in the illegal immigration status. Who let them all in here deliberately? And what was the intention? Biden and Trump are on the same fucking team. And they're doing the bidding of these corporate lobbyists, filthy rich white men and filthy rich Khazarians, who are the puppet masters of both Biden and Trump to let these people in. good cop, bad cop scenario, and the people are the fucking dumbasses who can't decode the mystery, thinking one team is against the other, and it's not. You let these illegal status migrants in here whose only intention is to work. You can't fault a man for that. But even though you can't fault him for it, it still causes imbalance to the average American man's ability to find confidence in getting married, buying a home, and raising a family, affording a lifestyle for himself that he could be proud of. It still interferes with that. But the underlying point is, why did they deliberately bring him in here? Biden brought him in here so that Trump can subjugate them to the 13th Amendment slavery status by arresting them through federal authority. Now they go under 13th Amendment slavery clause, which is once you become ward of state through conviction, you lose your rights. And you literally are a slave now. This is why a lot of these illegal immigrants who get arrested, they don't get sent back to their home country. They get sent everywhere except their home country. Why the fuck is that? Hello? Human trafficking, slave trade. Ain't nothing new. This is what they've been doing. And Khazarians and white men have always worked together to do that. Thus, the compatibility of their illusions of religion that is simply political leverage and power, domination. The compatibility of white Christian nationalism, which underlines Zionism, and that forms the bridge to the Zionist regime that is not Judaic, it is not religious, it is entirely political. Mamdani, a Muslim mayor of New York City, he won because the Jews of Brooklyn voted for him. What does that tell you? The Jews of Brooklyn voted for a Muslim mayor. What does that tell you? I know personally, as a New Yorker, from my personal interactions and conversations with the Judaic practicing Jews of Brooklyn, that they don't fuck with Zionism. They don't fuck with Khazarians. They don't believe as they believe, they don't see as they see, and they expose, they call out, they resist, they reject the Israeli state corporation. They're not the same fucking thing. Muslims and Jews have always lived peacefully together. Ain't nothing new, even since the Iberian Peninsula, when the Spanish Inquisition began, expelling Jews and Muslims together, which initiated manifest destiny and doctrine of discovery, spreading throughout the Western nations. It's very clear to see what's going on. Sagittarius emphasizing what we believe. It emphasizes who is living in truth and who selected to not live in truth. Those are the two different worlds. You can only live in truth with a clear conscience. You can't live in truth with a guilty conscience. So if you weren't able to clear that conscience You're still finding other people to be responsible for the burden of your conscience. You're projecting everywhere you go. You're pointing a finger and you happen to be exactly what you were saying somebody else is. It can't even see it. Netanyahu don't want Muslims, Islam, to have any representation in his country. It's his wish that everybody should see it in a vilified sense. To be scared of the boogeyman. He did that to us as African Americans right here in this same country. Yeah. Fear mongering about black men. We the boogeyman. We out to get your women. Hide your women. Oh, black men are so scary. They're dangerous. They're violent. This is what white men do when they are insecure. This is what white men do when they're intimidated. This is what they do when they're uncomfortable. When they have anything less than total and absolute control or knowledge of a thing. It's what they do to retain control of the narrative and status, with themselves at the forefront or on the top. And they are ruthless in that pursuit. There's nobody who could refute that. The threshold of fear is very sensitive. Why are they so fucking trigger happy with a gun in policing? Why to resort to such extremes to maintain control of a narrative? And they taught black women how to be just like them. They trained black American women how to think and behave exactly like them. And uniquely and ironically against black males. They trained them to do the same thing that they do against black men. Propaganda, fear-mongering, taking control and maintaining control of the narrative of pure lies, misinformation, propaganda, illusions, to maintain status and face. Pointing the finger, accusing everybody of being exactly what they themselves are. This transfer of the stellium into Sagittarius, life is going to go on in truth. And those who did not align with truth, you are going to be the bearer of the burden now. Those who refuse to align with the truth, you are going to carry that weight now. And you're not going to be able to transfer it to other people to foot it for you. Because guess what? It's karmic. Islam is going to spread regardless. It's going to increase. The discomfort of white males in America is going to increase for those who have that mindset. That time of reign, power, control, domination, that empire is over now. The empire is collapsing. It was built on lies. It was built on theft. It was built on greed. It was built on genocide. It was built on murder. It was built on rape. It was built on falsehoods. Greed, theft, deceit. And it no longer can stand. And ironically, it was in the name of Jesus. It was with the cross on a flag. This is where hypocrisy manifests. The contradiction with truth, reality, and authenticity at that bridge of Scorpio and Sagittarius. You exposed. Even white people are calling this shit out. White women are supposed to be the conscience of their men. Women are the conscience of their men. They are the oracle. They are the moonlight that brings them back to right, to good, to fairness, to justice, to mercy, to compassion, to understanding, to not violate the laws of the matriarchal authority of this universe, because that's exactly what calibrates karma, is when we violate the matriarchal dominion. Do white women have the power, the ability to influence, the leverage to influence white men to see the truth? To step over the thresholds of their insecurities? I don't know. But it's their role, it's their responsibility, it's their duty, it's their job. That's what women are here to do. You going too far. Is that the right thing? Are you sure about this? I don't know. That don't seem right. Why are you doing this? That's the woman's role in this world. She's an officer and deputy of the matriarchal dominion. The world can no longer tailor themselves to the convenience of white men's sensitivities and insecurities. The world is moving on to an authentic expression of itself, to where people are going to be who they really are, who they naturally are, and who they have the God-given right, inalienable right to be and express, regardless of white men's insecurities. The world can't fucking stop and spin the opposite direction because it makes them uncomfortable or feel insecure. The world is waking up out of submission to, compliance with, and agreement to the idea that white men should determine the identity of all people, the behavior of all people, the status of all people, the rights of all people. That shit is fucking over. Islam it carries a culture, a protocol, a way of life that exposes the darkness and demonology of the shadow Capricorn, the shadow 8, the devil card, of corporate business practices and politics over Western society. It directly exposes and opposes it, and it simply does so by remaining consistent with matriarchal law. And matriarchal law is consistent with equity law, true contractual law, civics, the inalienable rights of the true and natural living person, not the 14th Amendment fictitious status incorporated person. That's part of why they don't want the people to know or to embrace Islam. It exposes their own dark agendas. It exposes their oppression of women. that they have sold to women as liberation, that they have sold to women as freedom, that they sold to women as honoring them. But the results and consequences of what Western women produce and create from their freedom and liberty, it shows the exact opposite. That they create for themselves entrapment, regret, trauma, pain, and suffering, humiliation, a degrading status and image, the disrespect of their womb, the loss of reverence for the womb. What other country has such high divorce rates initiated by women alone? What other country or society has women who are so sexed out, used up, and ran through? But they're free? They're liberated? The culture of Islam saves women from that. It puts them in the direction and pathway by which they can recover the dignity and honor and always preserve their rights and best interests. There's no money in that. There's no money in functional marriages and relationships. There's no money in women being secure and honoring their womb. There's no money in women finding pride in their identity as women. There's no money in husband and wife staying together. There's money in dysfunction. There's money in chaos. And there's political leverage, power, and manipulation in that also. Islam eradicates, it prevents those symptoms from spilling over into society. It is preventative. And that disenfranchises and weakens the political and economic leverage of corporate lobbyists and of Khazarians, who are the owners of modern banking predatory strategies. You don't walk around here having girlfriends, running through girls, fornicating, sending them through all kind of trauma and strings of babies and using them up and all this other stuff without marrying them. Honoring them as wives, not your fucking girlfriend or something to fuck. No. That's the Christian way. Men hold each other accountable in Islam. If the brotherhood in the Muslim community finds you mistreating women, oppressing women, cheating on your wife, gambling, drinking alcohol, lying and stealing and cheating, indulging in usury, it's a problem. And they're going to hold you accountable. They're going to check you for that. They're going to come and see you. Yeah, that's what men need. We need that. And that keeps women safe. It keeps children safe. It keeps the family safe. It keeps the marriage in an honorable status. There's accountability. They're betting on the people's ignorance, because where there is ignorance, there is fear. And where there is fear, there is the success of campaigns of propaganda. Too many Americans don't know what's in the Holy Quran, what Prophet Muhammad stood for, what Islam is really all about. And they don't care to find out, because most motherfuckers is lazy. The only people who are scared of Muslims and scared of Islam are white people. Everybody else couldn't give a fuck. White people is the only ones who scared of Muslims, scared of Islam, scared shitless. Why is that? Ironically, all of their accusations happens to describe their own legacy, history, reputation, and resume through Christianity. The hypocrisy. I am witness to what Islam has done to the people who are in the worst condition of this nation, Black America. I've seen what Islam does to those who are in the worst condition in the prisons. I've been there. I taught Islam in the prisons all over the East Coast. I've had many students all over the East Coast and Midwest. I've been to every Muslim community in the Midwest and East Coast, South and North. My whole fucking life. I owe it to Islam for the foundation that I have today. Were it not for Islam, I would have never found my way out of being a nigga. I would have been another street nigga doing street shit. I would have never found myself. That was the foundation that gave me the discipline, integrity, self-respect, dignity, self-love, clarity and bond with God, character, insight, reverence for women, respect for women. Came from that. Fuck is you talking about? Nothing has had the power like Islam over a people who were enslaved and put in position to fail and engineered to have the worst of character in society. Islam restores and redeems those people. It transforms, it gives hope. The most intelligent and refined men that I have ever laid eyes on in my entire life, they were Black Muslim men in prisons. I've yet to see a more refined and perfect character and even physical form of their bodies, the cleanliness and the discipline to carve their body like the prototype of man, like I'm looking at Adam himself. I've yet to see that perfection. I've yet to witness such levels of intelligence like that of Black men who are Muslim behind a fucking wall. The FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover, he was asked his opinion. What's the greatest threat to America? And what did he say? He said Negro unity. That's what J. Edgar Hoover said, FBI Director. He said Negro unity is the greatest threat to America. Now, who is unifying Negroes in that time period? Come on, let's really talk about this. It was Muslims, the Nation of Islam in particular, the Black Panthers, the 5% nation of gods and earths. Also the Moorish Science Temple of America, established by Noble Drew Ali. And all of this was forerun by the greatest man who ever came to Black America, Marcus Garvey. All of this, with exception to Marcus Garvey, was Islam. They were Muslims. Islam made black people powerful, not in a way that is threatening to anyone, but that is threatening to the design, the intent of white men to subjugate black men to inferior positions and status in themselves. Islam has the potential to release black men from inferiority through character, through discipline, through matriarchal commitment, through unity, through brotherhood, and not as divisiveness to violence or oppression or terrorism. Black Panthers were vilified for taking up arms to defend their own communities against police brutality, and then infiltrated and turned into folk nation, people nation, gang-like expressions, Crips and Bloods, black gangsters, which was not the original intent. It was to police our own communities and hold our own communities accountable for any lack of character therein, for any violations to women and children's security therein. An FBI director, quote unquote, was fully aware of this, thus the infiltration of these orders of Muslims. This is white men's insecurities and fears that spews a very toxic culture, ideology, fear-mongering, and pure ignorance throughout America. Pure ignorance. Oh, this is a Christian nation. No, the fuck it's not. The Treaty of Tripoli clearly states that it is not, in any way or any fashion, to be exact, a Christian nation. As the forefathers were deist, which is how they found their compatibility with secret societies in and of itself, which came from the 33rd degrees of Masons, which was from the Moors, Muslim teachings. And they went to the dark side with that science. A lot of y'all don't want to deal with the full meaning. You don't want to deal with the full load, the full burden, the full picture of what's going on. And you know what? That points at your guilty conscience. Your conscience ain't clear, so you can't fuck with it. You can't deal with it. Oh, here he goes again. Your conscience can't deal with it because you don't have a clear conscience. So you can't fuck with it. It bothers you. It disturbs you because your conscience ain't clear. You feel too guilty to think about it, to talk about it, to process it, to admit that this is the theme on the fucking bulletin of the astrological expressions at hand. As you start to align with truth, as you start to claim truth, you start to embody it, it's going to expose people around you. Because what you're going to see is many who was walking with you is going to fucking disappear. They're going to disappear. Because truth is not something you can fake. It ain't something you can fake. When you crossing that border from Scorpio into Sagittarius, guess what? Everybody can't come with you. Because who was with you in Scorpio? They were struggling with the truth. And whoever's with you in Sagittarius, yes, that's authentic. Because they made it through that barrier of truth. They're going to get silent on you. They're going to slowly back up. Act like they don't hear, act like they don't see. Disappear into the clouds and the bushes. And return to their own vomit. And that dark underworld of the bliss of ignorance. And that guilty conscience is still going to be there fucking their ass up. Eating them alive. Fugitives from themselves. Yeah, have at it. The infamous is free. The infamous is free. And many are afraid to admit, to say what the fuck is really going on. But guess what? I'm not one of them. I'm not one of them. I know what the fuck is going on. And you do too. It's just that some of you are terrified.